You're listening to Games from the Cellar, where we play board games and then we talk about them. I'm Steven, your host, and tonight I was joined by John, Chris, and Sam to play Thunder Alley. Thunder Alley was designed by Jeff and Carla Horger and was first published by GMT in 2014. It was nominated for a Golden Geek Award in 2014 for Best Thematic Board Game. At the time of this recording, Thunder Alley has a 7.3 rating with 3,400 ratings on BoardGameGeek and has a ranking of 873. It's a 2-7 lightweight game that should play in about 90 minutes. So thank you for joining us in the cellar as we go in depth with Thunder Alley. So on the table we have Thunder Alley. John, tell us about Thunder Alley.
Thunder Alley is a game from GMT around 2014. I seem to think I was going to get it Christmas for 2013, but then it came late, and that was okay too. And it's 4 racing maps. This is essentially NASCAR racing, and it's card driven. There's no dice in this game. And you're a syndicate. You're playing a group of cars. So we're playing 4 players tonight. So each of us will be controlling 4 cars. And as in real NASCAR racing, one car can support another, and you can actually get ahead. So of course, it's really nice to support your own cars and move along. But at times, you're going to have to work with other people sitting at the table with you and find a way to get out ahead of the other players and make temporary alliances and agreements that might not last as long as you hope. So that's the nature of the game. There's different kinds of movements, so it shows the way drafting works in NASCAR. It shows the way just getting out in front and taking off goes in NASCAR. And just like in real racing, a big part of this is managing your tires, managing your fuel, keeping your car on the road. Because if you have to take a pit stop because you do too much, that slows you way down, and you don't do so well. So it's got yellow flags, it's got the whole 9 yards. The idea is to make a NASCAR game where each of the players is playing a syndicate of drivers.
You're playing in such a way not to have your one car get across first. You want to have your cars get across to get the most points.
Right.
So first through like 10th place, you get a certain amount of points, and I don't think you get anything after like 10th or 12th place.
I do not recall. But
every place gets points.
Every place gets
points.
Okay,
so every place. So this is an F1 racing where only the top 10. Anyway, it's card driven, which is really cool. There's no dice, which is interesting, but it's GMT. That's kind of like their shtick. They don't really use dice. They're kind of a chit pull.
Not for this kind of game. Yep, you're right.
So it's an interesting play that I recall the first time playing back in 2014 when you got it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking that I wasn't going to like it because it just doesn't seem like the type of game that I would like. This was the time we were playing Russian Crush a lot, and that wasn't really. I don't know. That one just did not do it for me. I know you love it, but for whatever reason, I couldn't get into it. And I could never get into Formula D because I'm just terrible at it. So I expected much of the same on this one, but actually I think this is one of my favorite racing games of all time, and I'm sad that it's been like 6 years since I've played it.
Well, it's time to fix that.
This isn't our first copy of Thunder Alley.
This is our second copy.
The first time it didn't go around.
And it has come back again, yes. So that alone is a nice plug for it, that Steven cared enough about this game that he went out and got me a second copy so that we could play it again.
Well,
and
it was, we have been talking about games that we would like to play for the podcast or just play in general that hasn't been to the table. Yeah, and Thunder Alley came up, and John, you were like, it's at home, it's on the shelf. I'll go get it. We'll bring it next week. And come to find out, at some point you had traded it off.
I had.
And don't remember to who, don't remember for what, but
somebody's enjoying it.
Someone else is enjoying it. I just know that I didn't buy this one. I didn't buy it back because this was a brand new and copy.
This is a brand new copy. But the one thing I will tell you is whoever did get my copy of the game, if they've played even a couple of times, they have discovered that they can stab their friends in the back in this game.
Oh, yeah.
Because at first it seems pretty tame and just kind of rolling along, and then you start figuring out how to use the cards. And this is a game where you could end up throwing your beer across the table at the guy that just managed to pull off a heck of a move and leave you behind.
Yeah, so this is NASCAR themed. So the beer would be
Budweiser.
Miller High Life.
Coors Light, maybe.
Yeah, High Life, Coors Light, Bud.
Yeah. Inevitably, some cars are going to be left behind. There are cards that make you kind of pull away from the pack. And if you're in a pack of 4 cars and you've got the lead car where you have to move without pulling the pack, you're going to get stuck behind. You just hope that you can get back into the draft of somebody either going by you or...
Yeah, it's a game about losing a line and then picking up the next line and riding that all the way around the track. Yep.
So this is the second time that I will have played this game, and I remember the first game being a little hesitant. I'm not normally a big fan of racing games, but I really enjoyed how the mechanics came together. How you were given a hand of cards, you have to make the best of what you got, and how there's a lot of politicking involved with which draft line you end up in and when you make a breakaway. And I remember I came very close to winning that first game until we drew the event card, and
all the cars got back together again.
Yellow flag, baby.
No, that wasn't it. I was like 5 spaces away from the end, and my lead car spun out and ended up facing the wrong way. And so I could not play the card to drag the entire stack of all of my cars and like 2 other cars across the finish line. So the second line caught up and passed us, and I did terribly.
Yeah. I think I remember in that game...
a fair amount of bitterness there. Wow.
Yeah,
that was 6-8 months ago.
Yeah.
And I remember well.
I can feel that.
No, but I think I remember in that game, I didn't finish the race first, but I think I finished second, third, and like
you won
fifth,
on
and
points.
like ninth,
Yeah.
and I was able to win on points.
Yeah.
Yeah, much the same. I wasn't excited about playing this the first time, but it was funny. We were discussing in our text chain what we were going to play tonight, and we were discussing the racing game, and Sam immediately was like, wait, which racing game is this? And we were being very vague, the one with the cars that go around the track, and finally we were like, the card one that we just played, and he's like, oh, okay, I like that racing game, that's fine. And so after that, we had the seal of approval, and yeah.
It was kind of funny because you realize how many racing games we actually do have. Some of them are just in the title. I mean, Race for the Galaxy is a racing game, but it's not a racing game.
Yeah.
I mean, Mississippi Queen is a racing game.
Moto Grand Prix.
Winner's Circle is a racing game.
Winner's Circle. I would consider Winner's Circle more of a betting game.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get down to it, a lot of games are racing games.
I mean, every game is essentially a race.
I was thinking specifically of games that try to match the theme of cars going around in a loop.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, I may have had Formula D in my head. Like, please, not that one.
Or maybe Bolide.
Yeah, Formula D has player
another
elimination,
one that I don't like,
which is great.
If you're stupid.
If you're dumb, which I am. I don't think I've ever completed a game of Formula D, to be completely honest.
There's one racing game that you guys pull out regularly that
Bolide.
I don't think I've ever completed more than half a lap without wrecking my car and trying to T-bone somebody and walking away from the table.
And usually you find yourself sitting up in the stands having ice cream, watching the rest of the race.
Okay. It just does not... I don't know.
I mean, hey, you like Root, and we don't particularly care for it. We all like different things.
In a lot of ways, Root is a race game.
I mean, it is.
I agree.
You're racing to 35 points.
Yeah.
30 points.
30 points. You're racing to 30 points. That is your finish line. You can think of the score track as a racetrack.
You can. As long as there's not cars going around in a circle.
I mean, you could make the race.
No, you can't.
Anyway.
Is all life just a race?
Anyway, Thunder Alley, we're going to give it a shot, and we'll be right back. All right, so Thunder Alley, we're done.
Yes, we are.
Chris pulled out the win at the very, very end. It looked very bleak for Chris.
It did look very bleak.
You know,
All right.
Beginning of the
saved
game.
by the turn
Okay.
order. That's why you need to be in the lead of the race.
Okay. So to be clear, it looked bad for Chris at the end of turn 1. The end of turn 2, things were okay, and there was no turn 4. So let's not pretend like there was a big period of time where it looked bad for Chris.
There was only 3 turns.
Oh no, it was
Right,
it was
I'm
it
just
was right at
saying.
the end. It looked like Chris was going to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. But he managed to get across with some help from one of his fellow players, which is how Thunder Alley works.
That's correct.
That sometimes the guy sitting next to you does as much to get you a win as you do.
The goodwill that I put out at the beginning of the game
It
helped
was the
push me
vibes.
across.
Yep, that was
You know,
it.
honestly, had I understood how the scoring breakdown actually worked, I probably would have
Left him hanging.
left him hanging. So we've been watching a lot of F1 the last couple of years, and so we're more used to the points being lower and dropping off faster than they do in Thunder Alley. That may be reflective of NASCAR, but you know, we have F1 on the brain where first place is only worth 25 points, and then second place is worth 18. Well, in Thunder Alley, it was, 46 for first place?
and then 41.
And then 42 for second
42.
place.
It was a
It dropped.
4 point.
It dropped 4
Yeah.
points, and then
it's
every
just
position
1 point
dropped
after
1
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And towards the end of the race, Chris was in the lead, but I had 3 cars storming and almost pulled it off.
So
But
just,
because he got to go first, he managed to get himself across the line and pull out the win.
Chris, did you win by 4 points?
Yes.
Yes.
Because it was 149, and then John had 145, and Steven had 141, and I had 140.
So it was that close.
It was that
And I'll be
close.
honest with you. Every time I've played Thunder Alley, the score is close. Nobody wins a blowout in Thunder Alley.
Well, when
It's
last
just
place is worth 28 points,
yeah,
there's not that much of a difference between
last
last and
Being
first.
the leader for 2 laps and getting that extra bonus there, the 3 points helped as well.
yeah. The point I was making is the way the math works, even if you take the last 4 places and someone else takes the top 4 places, they're going to be within roughly 40 points of you.
Yeah. That's about right.
Yeah.
Right? Between 40 and 50
Yeah.
points ahead of you.
And realistically, you're pretty hard pressed to get all 4 of your cars in last place.
It would be an
Or
achievement.
5, depending on how many players you have.
Yeah.
You have 4, 5, or 6 cars.
It would be an achievement.
Yeah.
After the first turn, after we all made our moves, it looked like that was going to be possible for Sam.
Yeah, he
it
had
did.
4 in the
Yellow
back
flag.
of the pack. But see what
man.
happens is, and you know, it's one of these things where whoever's up front, they've got a good reason to hack the people next to them. When you're in the back and you got 3 cars in the back and somebody else has 2 cars in the back, you kind of look at each other and like, we don't want to finish with this bad an embarrassment. We will get in line and we will work together.
We don't want to be lapped.
Yes, exactly. So suddenly it's a whole lot easier to cooperate when you're in last place than it is when you're in first place. When you're in first place, you still want to fight for that one little spot. And of course, and the reason in that first lap, at the very last, I did a solo movement where I was able to just sneak up in front of you so I could get that turn leader marker because 1 point can make a difference in this game.
Yeah, and speaking to that, I completely forgot about you don't want to start the race with your car you don't want to start the turn with your lead car.
Yeah,
Like that's just
typically
that's asking to get past. And I was in pole position. I didn't really remember, like I said, it's been a few years since I've played. I didn't remember the strategy, but as soon as everything started moving on the board, I was like, I made a huge mistake by playing my lead card.
Yeah, it probably cost you 1 point, though. And when it comes right down with the yellow flag, we had 2 yellow flags this time, which all those cars that were in the back got grouped up and pulled everybody back together. So what it meant was the race was very short because a lot of cars got a lot of free spaces.
Yeah, a lot of
Everybody
free
moved
movement.
as fast as the fastest car on the track for 2 of the 3. So coming into that third turn, most of the cars had 2 damage on them. Were picking up their third. A couple of cars pitted on one of the yellows, which turned out to not matter because everybody ended up getting all the way across the finish line without having to pit. So this was a very fast race. Usually there's a 4th turn because you don't have all these cars getting all these free movements.
Yeah, I think if there had been a 4th turn and it wasn't so close to the finish line, I think there would have been more cars that would have pitted.
Yeah,
And I think that was
absolutely.
just the nature of this particular track. It was very
Yeah.
short. It was
That
very
was
fast.
the gamble that Sam and I made on the first turn when it ended. We pitted our cars to clear off. I cleared off all of my damage.
Yeah,
You did all but 1 car.
Oh, it
Yeah.
was
That was the
permanent
gamble
damage.
we made.
So.
It's like, I'm going to go back like maybe 2 or 3 spaces, but we're all together.
Yeah, and I don't think it was a bad decision.
I mean,
And I don't think it was a bad decision
Right.
for you not to, because
the other
that would
thing
have given
was
up the lead.
right. The other thing was our cars were already in the back, so it wasn't much of a loss for us to drop a couple spaces.
You took a couple from that were
I had a
closer to the
couple.
front.
In hindsight, maybe those were foolish, but I didn't expect us to end that quickly. In my head, I was thinking, okay, if the game goes on long enough that pitting becomes necessary, I lose less if I pit now than
Sure do. Because
later on.
in a pit at speed, it's not like there's a pit lane. Every other every other racing game has pit lane rules that are really hard to understand. I swear there is not a single racing game where they are just straightforward and make perfect sense. Formula D, they're okay. But all the other racing games I've played, they're kind of tough. Thunder Alley doesn't even pretend to have a pit lane on the track. You simply move into the inside of the track. You declare you're pitting. The car moves in, and then it moves back a few spaces, and then it comes back out onto the track when you start moving
but
again.
significantly slower.
Significantly slower,
Right,
but
for
you
one
can get
card.
picked back up
Yeah.
into
you
a
get
chain.
into a draft, or you get into a lead pole, and suddenly you're doing
And-
okay. You just
and-
have to make sure you get up with the where
Yeah,
those other
and
cars
that's kind of the key mechanic of the game is that when you play the cards, you take the special movements. You draft, you move everybody in a line, or you pull everyone behind you, or push them around. And so, when you're pitting, ideally you're gambling, well, there's going to be a chain coming along. I'm going to time this so that I can get off, because I remember not this game, but the game I played before, that was a big part of it. You would say, okay, I'm going to pit, but I'm going first. So I'm going to clear my damage, I'm going to move back, and then I can move that car back onto the track
It's about where you can get scooped up.
and get scooped up so that I keep going.
In a 4-player game, you've got 4 cars. You, like you said, you knew that you were going first. You can then move that. You have complete control over that if you're the first player. Even if you're the second or third player, you have a good idea. Because you're in charge of a team, you can play that team strategy and really kind of get that pit car back up to running, like almost right away.
Yeah.
You might lose like what equivalates to like 3 movement points total.
Yeah.
Equivalates.
Equals.
Yeah. What's the equivalent to?
the equivalent to?
people with the Mississippi education, you
It's
always
the
use
Mississippi
these big
public
words.
education.
It's far
Edumacation.
superior to where we are here.
It's not that they're big words. We just say them longer.
Make them longer sounding.
That's how you know. It's the quality.
So all in all, and it's as GMT. Of course, GMT is not particularly famous for these sorts of games. The Horgers who created this game. There's a few of these out there now. There's a Formula One version of this, or an open cockpit car. I forget. I don't know if it's supposed to be Indy or if it's supposed to be Formula One or what. But there's a couple of different versions of this game, and I think there's another one coming out where you can actually shoot at each other. But there's this is a line. Thunder Alley was the first one, and Thunder Alley has all of these movements that remind you of a NASCAR race. The movement reminds you of a NASCAR race. The question becomes, I watched some NASCAR this year because they had new rules and I wanted to see how it worked. And there's parts of NASCAR that aren't terribly exciting, like when everybody is just line ahead all in a big long draft and you have to decide if that's the kind of thing that's going to excite you when you play a board game version of it. And in this game, to its credit, the guy who won the game was the first guy across the line. And that's not necessarily the case. You can win this game taking 4th, 5th, and 6th place, and the guys that took 1st, 2nd, and 3rd are kind of gritting their teeth because, hey, how come he won? Because you're winning as a syndicate. You're not winning as the driver that got across the line. So one of my things with race games is I like it. I don't want to be a syndicate. I want to be a car. I want to be a driver. I want to be a rider, whatever racing you're doing. And so from that perspective, Thunder Alley kind of has an asterisk next to me when I play it.
See, I think I enjoy playing as a syndicate as opposed to a single car. I liked that the track was more full. I liked that there was more nuance. I liked that I didn't necessarily have to count on one. You're not counting on one car. It's a team game. I'm not only saying how can I use my opponents. Can I use my own? I'm going to use my own cars to push this guy far ahead so that he can take his action later in the round and close it out for me.
The way I look at this one is, yes, I typically enjoy the single racer who gets across the line first wins type of racing game.
Mm-hmm.
What I love about Thunder Alley and why there's an asterisk, like you said, the rules are simple enough and the game abstracts the racing enough to where running a team instead of a single driver, it actually makes sense given the rule set.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think with
the multiple cars does work.
I think with this particular rule set, it makes sense to run as a syndicate rather than as a single driver.
Oh, for sure.
And the way that everything and the way the entire package comes together, it just makes it a really good game.
Yeah,
So,
it would be this would be a very poor game if you only controlled one car.
Yeah.
I
And
think.
you only got one movement per
Yeah.
round.
Oh, it wouldn't work at all.
It wouldn't work at
You
all.
you need 12, 16, 20 cars on the track. in
Right,
order
but
for
that's
this game
because
to
the rule set's designed to look like
Yeah.
NASCAR racing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
it
NASCAR, the more cars, the better.
work. Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not like the Formula One where they're like, no, 20 we think is the perfect number. Like, I want to see more cars on the track.
No. No, I
My
agree.
only disappointment was we didn't see a big pileup.
No wrecks.
There were no wrecks.
We
There were
did
no
have
pileups.
that one super long chain. There was one time when somebody moved every car.
Yeah.
And it
on-
was
on
terrible.
It was.
It was
wa-
terrible. I
it was
hated that
one
happened
little
because I just
corner
didn't want it to.
where
It was
there was
bad
only
for me.
one lane to get through.
I mean, it didn't help anybody. Like, the net gain was
No.
essentially
Okay.
the same for
So
everybody.
it maintained the status quo, but for me, the status quo was bad.
It was bad.
So I didn't like that. And the fact was,
Any given Sunday. That's how it goes.
I'm just saying, in that
Yeah.
circumstance, I wanted there to be a bunch of infighting and different chains so I could squeak my way in.
So-
when we just say, we're going to drive 5 spaces closer to the end of the lap, to end of the race, that's what we're doing this turn. I go, oh, great.
And that's but you can break that
Oh,
single
I'm-
chain anytime you want.
I'm not saying
did.
I'm not saying it's a poor mechanic.
Exactly. and
Well, that plays a little differently when you're at the top of the
I
chain
was
and
at
at
the
the
top,
back.
but if I pushed it, then 2 other people get to go in front of me, and the chances of me still holding the lead position at that point were slim to none. John had 2 cars behind me that had not moved yet. And
Yeah.
if we were that close,
Yeah.
he would have just pulled out, taken his 3 cars
and
across,
cruised.
and
And I had the lead movement to drag my guys across without everybody. So I was.
I had the same.
If you had
part,
not done
too,
that,
so.
I owned this race. I might have won by 20 points, and that would have been a huge win. But of
That would have
course,
been an upset.
the nature of the
So
game.
I
is
had the
that
lead
doesn't
card,
happen.
would have played before you, and would have
Yeah.
crossed the finish line with my cars. So that would have been my race. But
So-
you did what you did. It's fine. It was a great time. Really
And-
enjoyed
and
it.
It was a
close
fun
race.
game.
I was not complaining about the mechanics there. I was just saying
Yeah,
that turn, I was sad from a strategic
Mechanically, I
standpoint.
think this game is about as sound as any racing game gets. And I think when we first played it, the first couple of times we played it, and seeing what Jeff Horger has written on the internet about some of these things, we weren't thinking creatively enough to realize that some of the cards, you can really snooker someone in this game. So there are times when you can really where it looks like somebody's kind of got a smile on their face because they've got it all worked out, and suddenly you find a way to just cut them away from the pack, and their cars that have already moved don't have any way to respond. And like you talking about, your lead car had already moved. You just didn't have a way to respond to it. But there's times when that's the car in the back as well, that they think they've caught up and they've got on a chain and they're going to get drafted, and you just go, nope, I'm moving everybody up exactly one slot, and that leaves them buried and they lose their turn.
So, all right, we just posted Mosaic, so I did a lot of editing on that one. You're very welcome.
Siege
And
engines.
Siege engines. Thank you. Drink. So there were a lot of suggestions that we had that we thought would make that game better. Siege engines, and then the tracking
Yeah.
for
Governments.
the pillars and the achievements and all that. The only thing that I think Thunder Alley could use is just a slight tweak to that matrix, to that scoring matrix. Otherwise, I think it's a great game. I
Yeah.
think out of the box, the way that it's written, perfect. And I mean, there might be somebody on Board Game Geek probably has done the math and come up with a different matrix, or even in NASCAR, the matrix changes from year to year based on the rule set.
Well, and
So it could be that there's a new matrix.
that's a super easy change that anybody can make to suit their group's particular tastes. If you want it more separated, you make it more separated, and if not, you don't. Or you only score the top 10 cars, or something like that. I mean, there's ways you could adjust that to make it suit your group more than anybody else.
Yeah. But I mean, I like the fact that we were within 9 points of each other.
Yeah, I like it too. I did not
and
think
I think we all
was
played well.
I did not think I was within striking distance of the lead.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was 9 points behind you?
I had 49. What'd you have?
140. So I was 9 points away, but if I took last place. If my car had been further up the pack, I would have been there, right? And I could have won without having. I had one car in fourth. If I'd taken fifth with my car in last, I would have won.
Yeah. So I mean,
that's a big change, though.
There was one thing that I thought the game ended too quickly.
It was very abrupt.
It was very fast, and I really do like the. You get tokens when you do certain things. You use gas, you use your engine, you're using something, and you get 3 of those, then you're going -3 or whatever the card is. And we didn't get to that point at all. And that's a big part of this
and
game.
that kind of
and racing.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into the scoring as well, because we got 2 yellow flags, which meant that essentially we leapfrogged everybody up to the farthest racer, right? So we got a ton of free movement. Which meant that every turn you weren't worried about, okay, I have to worry about my guys in last, I have to bring them up, and so on. It was, okay, we're starting off from square one again. How do I break out in front? And I think that because of that, it's easy to focus on first place. But if you're all strung out, all of a sudden you got to think about, okay, so I've got a guy in first, and I've got a guy in like the bottom 4. How much do I care about the guy in the bottom 4? Because when I activate him is just as important as when I activate the guy in first, right?
Yeah.
And if I only care about first, I don't care about the guy in last. Whatever, he can hang out back there, and maybe one day he'll be helpful. But if I care about where my team scores, now I have to worry about. I can't leave Carl out to dangle while everybody else drives on to glory. I've got to worry about where he's going to place and try to bring him into the fold.
You got to make sure Carl's not sleeping at the wheel.
Right.
Because he's very lazy.
Lazy
I thought Carl was on John's team.
Carl's always on John's team.
Yeah.
Well,
and he may be sleeping at the wheel, or frankly, he may not even get to the track on time.
I was going to say,
the problem with Carl.
Yeah.
That left wheel did look a little wobbly.
Because I remember, again, the only other time I've played this game, the cars out in front didn't move very far. Right? There was a lot of movement that was like, okay, well, I'm going to draft 4 spaces to move the lead up, and I've got this 8-card movement for my guy in back to try and tack him onto a chain. And we had 2 or 3 different chains going, trying to catch up with the lead.
Yeah. This track that we played was very tight.
There was
several places
where
there was only 2 lanes, and there was one spot where it was just one.
Yeah.
So whoever got to that spot was guaranteed to get pushed
things
out of
out.
the way.
Yep.
Yeah. And that wasn't bad, right? It was a different game, and I enjoyed that. But I think that combined with the 2 yellow flags that we got drastically changed the tone of the game. It was very frantic.
Yeah, this was a sprint of a race rather than a marathon of a race, which, it definitely changes the feel for the game. Because, I recall very, very vaguely, I guess, from my play years ago, actually having to worry about the damage on my car. There are times where you look at your car and you look at the cards in your hand and you want to play the 8, but it's going to put a permanent damage on your card or on your car. So you can't, because then your car is going to crash out. So there's this whole dynamic that we kind of missed because it was a sprint race where we weren't worrying about pitting. We weren't worrying about how hard we were running. Sorry. Go ahead.
I don't remember if we did 2 laps.
We did 2 laps.
We did 2 laps?
We did 2 laps.
I don't remember going through that narrow
3
space the first time.
Because we yellow flagged the first time.
A bunch of people up through it.
Yeah.
And when you yellow flag on it, you use it as a double up.
Okay.
Yeah, because you and I were in, I think you and I are just over the finish line, and very little hope of getting. That was over half of the course there.
Yeah.
That
I don't remember this. I don't remember
that was the first yellow flag was up in that area.
Yeah, so we didn't actually have to. When it came around to that, that's when we pitted,
Okay. I mean, I guess that just shows how frantic it was, right? Like, I don't remember going around a second time.
Essentially, having 2 yellow flags on the sprint track with only 2 laps, with that bottleneck and everything, like...
We had 3 turns, right? You don't take penalties for your movement until you take an action and your car has 3 wear on it.
Yeah. And it doesn't... Even if you get like a permanent one, once you get 3 tokens on it, you're a -3. You get a 4th one, you're -4.
Right, but it's when you start your action with 3 wear on the car. So wear was totally irrelevant. Pit stops, totally irrelevant. Yeah. There are whole swaths of the rules that just didn't matter this game because it was so fast.
Yeah. So typically it's your 4th turn is when you're butting up against... the wear issue.
You got to decide: do I clear it out, or do I push on,
or do you? There are certain cards that don't give you wear, so do you kind of disperse those through your car so you can go that 4th turn?
Well, and the other thing is you get wear from the event cards too that we did not get because of the event cards that we pulled. Even our event card that was a collision required 2 cars to be next to each other,
and we were all in a big snake, so.
There's permanent damage that comes from that as well that just never came into our play. So this was a bit of an out of the ordinary play, and so it got done a little bit earlier.
Yep. But even still, it was a great play.
There's a lot of burn in this game. There's a lot of heads down, and at one point,
of shaking fists.
The guy diagonally across the table, Chris is taking his turn, and I'm looking like, okay, what am I going to do? And I'm like, I can't decide yet because a whole lot can change. So you, to a certain extent, you got to wait for your turn, and then you realize what your opportunities are.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you can kind of nudge that player into making advantageous moves for you.
There was a little bit of table talk going on.
Yeah. Well, that's the point of the game.
Chris is like, maybe I'll try this maneuver. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great maneuver. Go ahead and do that one, please.
Well, Steven wants me to do it, so maybe I'll do it.
It must be good.
It must be good.
Yeah.
He's such a great player at everything.
So one aspect of this that I really enjoy is the way your options narrow as you take your turn. You start out with 5 cards in your hand for your 4 drivers, right? So you're going to have 1 left over, but you don't get to refill your hand until the next turn or the next round. So a card you play for driver A is a card you can't play for driver B. And you can't predict what happens from turn to turn, right? I mean, I know by the time it gets back around to me, the track's going to look very different.
And especially your options get more limited.
Especially with the way cars link up, I could be halfway around the board. And that happened a couple times where
you could be exact same spot.
Yeah, or you could have not moved at all, and you go, well, that sucks. What do I do now? But I like that narrowing choice range. And how you have to sacrifice things and take gambles.
Yeah, and I held on to the solo card for that second round so that I could pull out into the lead.
I did the same. The track was so narrow, I didn't have the option to cut in and disrupt the
timing wasn't right. Yeah.
I couldn't disrupt the chain because the track was so narrow, and I just didn't have the opportunity.
And also, John was the first player.
Yeah.
So you went second, then I went third, which allowed me to get into the front, and Steven's car was too far back he got back into the line, but he was not able to take
the lead. Take the lead. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so it's come to that time. Who wants to go first? Who wants to give this a ranking between 1 and 10? Using the good old BGG standard. Chris, you want to go first?
Sure. I won the game. I'll go first.
Yeah, that's right. We'll do it in poll order.
Okay. Thunder Alley is one that I've always enjoyed. I really like the mechanics of it, so I'm going to give it a solid 7.
Okay. Who was next? It was John.
In second.
Go
7
ahead, John.
All day. Mechanically, this game is not only absolutely sound, but it actually matches what's on the cover of the box. It's a great setup, and in true GMT style, this is a simulation game. I mean, it's supposed to look like a real NASCAR race, and it certainly does that.
Yeah, they abstracted the things that needed to be abstracted, but made it into a really good simulation.
Yeah.
So I'll go next since I was in third place. And, honestly, when I think of all the racing games that we have and that we've played, Thunder Alley is my favorite. I think I like automobiles, but we don't own a physical copy of that. But we play it on BGA all the time. I would say it was my second favorite. I think Thunder Alley is my favorite racing game. And so with that, I mean, it's about as good a 7 as there is. I mean, as far as racing games go, it's one of the best.
Yeah. So since I claimed last place, I will give my rating last. And I think you really wrapped it up there, right? As far as racing games go, this is an excellent racing game. The mechanics match the theme very well, from what I gather. I think, never voluntarily watched a NASCAR race. I think my favorite thing about this game, beyond the strategy and the cutthroat table play and all of that, is even when you're in last place, you can still affect things at the front.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to a lot of racing games where when you hit last place, it's very easy to just watch everybody else drive off in the distance.
Yeah, for sure.
And that sucks, right? That is a large part of why I don't like racing games generally. But that doesn't happen here, because you can always latch onto the back of the chain and push it forward when someone doesn't want you to. Or
I mean, hey, look at Chris. Last place to first.
Yeah. You can always pull something out, or there could be an event card or something like that. So even if you don't have a chance of winning, you can still very effectively king make, at least, which isn't something I hugely enjoy, but it's a significantly better option than watching everyone disappear.
Then getting on your phone and say, "Oh, it's my turn here. I'll move. I'll do this."
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
so it is a very solid 7.
Yeah.
I would happily play this again. I don't know that it would be the top of my game list ever, but I would happily play it multiple times.
It's a game that keeps you engaged throughout the play.
Yes, and I think that's important.
That is very
especially
important.
For racing games. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm just biased there, but it's very easy to clock out.
All right, great. So that was Thunder Alley from GMT. Now, I know a lot of people think of GMT and they think of war games, but they got a lot of really interesting Euro-type simulation games. So I would suggest giving GMT a chance. Thunder Alley, Dominant Species, what was it? Leaping Lemmings is another favorite of ours.
GMT, yes it is.
Are we going to play Dominant Species one day?
Absolutely.
I don't know if I've ever actually played a full game of Dominant Species.
Was this board destroyed by an asteroid?
He wasn't there for that.
No,
You were not there for that.
I wasn't there for that?
Not
Okay.
that one. All right, so that was Thunder Alley. Thank you for listening, and thank you for joining us in our conversation. John, Chris, Sam, and I thank you for joining us in conversation about Thunder Alley. You can join us in conversation by visiting our website, cellargames.com, where you can find links to our social media and Discord server. We also have a blog and a guild on Board Game Geek. We look forward to hearing from you.